Hi folks, I hope all of you are doing very well. As you probably know by now, this is the second of two lectures on MLA Citation, whereas the first one covered in-text citation. This one is going to cover the development of a works cited page. Now, the other thing that I want to note before I go into the substance of this lecture is that similar to what I did with the last one, right below the link to this lecture, you're going to see a sample um, document called, I think, it'll be sample works cited page, or perhaps just works cited page, right below this link in the module where you found this lecture. That's going to give you a sort of example to look at, so that, for those of you who are maybe new to MLA citation, so that you'll know what these documents will look like. Now, when you look at the sample works cited page, the one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that normally when you write an essay and then put a works cited page at the end, the works cited page is going to be started on a new page and be in the same file as the rest of your essay. But since, we are at this moment just talking about the works cited page, I still wanted you to have a standalone example of that kind of document to look at. So, moving along, and just to let you know, when I go over some of the examples with you in this lecture, I'm just gonna go over what I would consider the main feature of each citation type, or another way to think about it, something about the type of citation that might trip up students normally, or give you folks problems. I'm not going to laboriously go over each example, because that would cause this lecture to become even longer than the previous one, and I'm pretty sure none of us, myself included, want that to happen. So, moving on. Basic formatting stuff. If you have any familiarity with MLA citation, you probably know this stuff already. So for most of you, it'll probably be just a refresher. But nonetheless, I think it's good to go over this stuff. In a standard works cited page, you're going to use double spacing all the way through the document. So even when you have the words works cited singular or works cited plural at the top and centered, you would use double spacing after that and all the way through. Now, when you add in the actual entries on your works cited page, you always want to apply to them what we call a hanging indent, which is you type it out, and then anything beyond the first line of that entry, if it goes on to a second, or in some cases a third line, anything beyond that first line would be indented half an inch. It's really easy to apply a hanging indent in Word, but if any of you don't know how to do that, contact me and I'll go over that with you individually. I'd be happy to do so. You always want to list the entries on a works cited page in alphabetical order, according to the author's last name. If you're citing a source that does not have a person as the author, if it's either the title of a work itself or the title of a corporation, you would again list it in alphabetic order, except if the first word of that title is one of the articles, a, an, or the. You would then alphabetize it by the next word in that title. So let's say, for instance, you're alphabetizing the novel The Sound and the Fury, and for some weird reason, no one on the planet remembers that it was written by William Faulkner. If you just had the title, you would alphabetize it by the S in sound, not the T in the. Okay. So the other thing that we need to be aware of when we're dealing with either a works cited page or when you're displaying titles in the body of your essay is there's always going to be that question of when do we put titles in quotes versus when do we italicize them. The rule of thumb is this: if you're presenting the title of a short work, like an individual story, song, poem, or article, or in some cases, the title of an individual TV episode, all those titles would go in quotes. The titles of longer or whole works like a whole novel, a whole CD, or a whole album, for those of you who no longer buy CDs, probably most of you, but I'm a bit old-fashioned as far as that goes. Title of a whole magazine or a whole TV show, again, because these are considered longer or complete works, it would be italicized. So, let me just say before I go over the main features of this example with you, when I go over these examples, I don't want you to get the impression that these are the only kinds of sources that you can cite in your papers. I'm just going over these ones with you because these are the most common kinds of sources that people use in their essays. Also, as you look at my examples down at the bottom of a slide or in a couple cases on separate slides, I want you to notice that even though I've got them single-spaced here, that's just a product of the fact that it's hard to replicate double spacing and a hanging indent on a PowerPoint slide. So, just remember that when you do your own works cited pages, that the double spacing and hanging indent should both be in play. So, probably the most common kind of source that people use in academic essays, it would be a single authored book. So in this case, we're citing the novel Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Notice how the author's name is always going to be formatted. It's always going to be last name, comma, first name. In this case, because it's a title of a novel, the title is italicized. The city of publication, followed by the name of the publisher, followed by a comma, followed by period, and then the word print. Small detail, but notice that the word print capitalized and also followed by a period. Next common kind of title, short text in a collection. Just as a tip, anytime you cite one or more of the essays from our textbook, this is the template that you would use, okay? So, you start out by giving the name of the author of the individual essay that you're citing, or short work, to put it broadly. Again, last name, comma, first name, followed by a period. The title of the short work, essay, what have you, put in quotes. Notice that the title at the end of the work goes inside the closing quotation mark. The title of the larger book or collection that you took that from is italicized. If there's an editor, which in most cases, for any kind of anthology or collection, there's going to be an editor or editors. You would put that after the title of the whole book. Notice that the editors' names are displayed in normal fashion, but we designate them also by the capital ED period. After the name of the editors, you again go back into city of publication, followed by colon, name of the publisher, followed by a comma, and then year of publication, the involved page numbers. Real quick about the involved page numbers. If you're citing an essay and let's say the essay, the body of the essay, including the conclusion, ends on page 22, but the works cited page, bibliography, what have you, ends on page 23. You would still list page 23 as the end page number, because that bibliography or works cited page, whichever the case might be, is still considered part of that document. So I just want you to be aware of that. And then, assuming that it's a standard print textbook like what we're using here, you would just use the word print, capitalize again, and follow it by a period. Okay, article from an academic journal. Now, let me point out that unless your professor specifies otherwise, you would only use this format for an academic journal if it's one that you got directly from a library that you could physically, hold the journal in your hands. If it's one that you got from a database, then you would use the next model for it. But let's say that you do have an article that you found, sort of like an overtly hard copy that you could physically hold the journal itself in your hands. You would again start author's name, last name first, comma, first name, followed by a period, the title of the individual journal article, again, ends with a period and put in quotes. Period would go inside the closing quotation marks. The title of the journal article. Notice that in this case there's a title and a subtitle. The PS is the main title, then a colon, and then the subtitle, political science and politics. After that, and notice that after the title of the journal article, the title of the journal itself, which was italicized, there's no punctuation between that and the volume and issue information. So, just be aware that that's what the next point is. That the 25.4, after the title of the journal, you always need to give what we call the volume and issue information. The volume number is always going to go to the left of that period, and the issue number is going to go to the right of the period. Because in MLA, it's always volume number before issue number. And notice that in MLA, there's no need to use like the abbreviation VOL for volume when you're just citing a journal article, or like IS for issue. You just put it all in number form. So in this case, you can probably figure out by yourself, but in this case, we're referring to volume 25 and issue 4 of that particular journal. The year of publication goes in parentheses after the volume and issue number. If an additional month or season is listed, that would also go in parentheses, in those parentheses, but it would be before the year. So if this was like April 1992, you would do April 1st, and then the year, and then the closing parentheses. Then you would have the involved page numbers, and then print as normally formatted. Okay? So, Text from a database. This, again, I alluded to it earlier, is the format that you would use whenever you go to like Academic Search Complete, or what we refer to as an academic database of any kind, to get your information, to get your journal article. Now, notice that up through the page numbers, okay, the formatting of the citation is exactly as it would be for a normal journal. It's just after that you need to put some more information. So notice that after the page numbers here, we have the title of this database, which in this case, Expanded Academic Experience. Notice that the title of title of the database is italicized. And then I do want to explain the word web. Usually when you get an article from a database, that article is going to be presented to you in one of two ways. It's either going to look like an HTML page or a normal web page that you would just scroll down and not have any like actual page numbers then associated with it. If it's that case, as I've done in this example, you would put the word web after the title, of the database. However, if you were able to get your article as a PDF file, which is the preferred method, because then it would maintain all of the original page numbers, then in place of the word web there, you would just put PDF file or PDF, whichever you prefer. Doesn't really matter as long as each of the letters PDF are capitalized. And then after that, you would give the date that you accessed that particular item through the database. So again, just as a reminder, this format does not apply to anything that you just get through like Google or Bing or Yahoo. This is just for items that you get from the actual academic databases. I want to reinforce that point. The date of when you got it should not be italicized. I could never tell for sure if it's italicized on that slide, but it should not be. And then if your professor requests it, you could also provide the web link at the end. I do not require it. The MLA leaves it optional. Most professors I know do not require it, but that may be something that you would want to check with your professor. So here's the format that you would use when you're dealing with an article from an internet site, or again, something that you got through like Google, Bing, Yahoo, what have you, or a meta search engine like Dogpile. We'll talk about those later. I'm going to give you a very quick rundown of all the information that you need to include. Some of it is on an if needed basis, but everything up through the date accessed is required. So you need the name of the author or authors, article title, title of the website, site publisher if it's available, not always available, the date that the article was posted on the website if available, hopefully it would be, but not always, the publication type. I apologize for those notices on the side of the screen there. I'm a bit of a Words of Friends junkie, and apparently one of my old students just invited me to play a game with her. So, sorry, I apologize for the distraction, and now I'm rambling. See what sort of terrible thing that does to me? I was in a nice flow, and now I'm rambling like a borderline crazy person. But, so this is the list of things that you need. Hopefully you've looked it over as I've been rambling, and I'm going to go to the actual examples now. So, notice that it starts out as always with the name of the author of the article. Now, if there's no author or corporate name as the author, you just start it with the name of the article. Hopefully there would be, because it's always good to have that, but if there's not, you just start it with the name of the individual article in quotes. The name of the website, in this case salon.com, is italicized followed by a period. Assuming that the name of the site publisher is the same as the name of the website, it usually is. When you present it as the site publisher, notice that it's not italicized, still capitalized but not italicized, followed by a comma, then the date that it was originally posted, followed by the word web, that just shows that you got it from the internet, and then if it's available, the date, or of course it would be available, the date that you access, and then if your instructor requires it, but I no longer do, you would also put the web link at the end to the individual article. Most professors now do not require it. Some do. As I said earlier, the MLA leaves that open to instructor preference, so always check with your teacher on that before you go and use your internet sources. So, look at the other examples though. This shows what you do when no site publisher or date that it was posted online are given. Notice that everything is pretty much the same, but if you don't know the site publisher, you list the name of the you use the NP abbreviation to stand for no publisher listed, NP, and then ND as in dog, or date in this case, if no date that it was originally posted on the internet is provided. Usually, most sites that are backed by a corporation, like CNN, Fox News, or a university, if we can include that in the loop, are gonna have some kind of publisher listed for them. Usually when we don't have a site publisher, it's because we're dealing with like someone's individual like personal blog or homepage that they privately publish without any kind of corporate or institutional backing. But most of the time, there will be a site publisher listed. It's usually going to be down toward the bottom of the web page, just as a tip. Okay? So, if you use a DVD or video, this is the information that you would need to provide. The film title and director name are reversible. I'll show you what that means momentarily. Performer names are optional. Some people like to include it, some do not. Sorry for that stuff, by the way. The theatrical release year, you would need to include if that year is different from when the videotape DVD or I suppose Blu-ray was released. Okay, the studio name you always need to include, followed by the year that the DVD or video was released. That will always be included, and then the publication type. Okay, so here are some examples, and I used an older film to show the distinction between, theatrical release year and DVD or Blu-ray, I suppose, release year. But first off, the MLA allows people to cite movies and DVDs in two ways. One is to start with the title of the movie, followed by the director's name, or you could start it with the name of the director and then follow it with the title of the film. Either way is acceptable, but professors, unless they otherwise specify, are just going to want you to demonstrate that you're consistent in how you cite this kind of text, if you will, particularly if you cite more than one DVD or video in a given assignment. Now notice that how you cite it on the works cited page is going to influence how you should cite it in the text of your essay. If you cite the title first, you would just use the title or a shortened version of it if you feel it's necessary in your in-text citations. If, however, you use the director's name first, you would just put the director's last name in the in-text citation. I'm not going to go over each of the little details of this citation type because I want to wrap this up and be honest with you, I want to eat my dinner. I'm getting very hungry, but I also just don't want to belabor these points. But notice how the formatting of the director's name changes. If you list the director's name first, as I did in the second example, notice that it's last name, comma, first name, another comma, and then the director designation. In this case, though, the DIR is all lowercase. If, however, you list the director second in the overall scheme of things, their name is formatted normally, but the DIR comes before that, and the D is capitalized, okay? Now look over the rest of those details on your own. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, I want to point out real quick, if there's no distinction between the theatrical release year and the year that the DVD or Blu-ray, what have you, was released, you just list it once, as I did here, after the name of the studio. So this would be what you would consider the shortest possible form of a movie video citation. Okay? So, one more and then I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to eat my dinner and you all are going to have a great night. If at any point in your essays that you write for this class, you're both allowed to and want to use a personal interview, I do allow you to use personal interviews in your essays as long as you clear it with me first. This is the format that you would use. You would put like the name of the person who was interviewed, last name, comma, first name, followed by period. Personal interview next. Both personal and interview are capitalized, and then the date, in this case purely imaginary, of course, that the interview was conducted. And notice I gave you a sample in-text citation. Whenever you cite a personal interview, that interviewee's last name is all that you need to use in the in-text citation. You don't need to use any of the other info as well. Okay, so that's it for now, but as always, folks, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact me. That's what I'm here for. And ignore this stuff as I back out, and have a great night, folks. Bye.